Before we talk about food or exercise or supplements, I want to ask you something uncomfortable. What are you really afraid of when you think about turning 60 or 70 or 80? Yeah. Is it death? Or is it the image of becoming dependent, needing help to dress, to walk, to think clearly? Is it the fear of being a burden to your children, of slowly disappearing while everyone else keeps moving? Because here's the truth, no one says out loud, most people are not afraid of aging. They are afraid of losing autonomy, dignity, and relevance. They are afraid of hearing someone whisper, she is not the same anymore. And yet I have read hundreds of stories from people in their 60s and 70s who say something radical. I feel more alive now than I did at 40. Some of them survived cancer. Some live alone and feel at peace. Some are starting new degrees, learning new languages, running marathons, praying at dawn, dancing, building businesses, falling in love with life again. And then there are others who say quietly, I wish I had known this earlier. Maybe it is too late for me. So which one are you becoming? Because aging is not just biological, it is psychological, it is emotional, it is spiritual, and the way you live the next 10 years will decide whether your later decades feel like decline or like a second beginning. Now, let us be honest about something. Life expectancy has increased dramatically over the last decades, but health expectancy has not kept the same pace. We are living longer, yes, but many people are living those extra years, managing chronic pain, multiple medications, cognitive decline, and a growing sense of isolation. That gap between years lived and years lived well is where the real conversation should happen. And yet most people do not think seriously about aging until their body forces them to. They think about retirement, about pensions, about financial security, but very few people sit down at 40 or 50 and ask themselves, how do I want to arrive at 70? Do I want to be independent, mentally sharp, emotionally grounded, spiritually at peace? Or do I want to spend those years fighting consequences of habits I ignored? Genetics plays a role, of course, but it is not the whole story. A significant portion of how we age is shaped by daily choices, what we eat, how we move, how we sleep, how we manage stress, who we surround ourselves with, and what meaning we attach to our lives. Aging does not suddenly begin at 60. It is a cumulative process. The inflammation you ignore at 40 may speak loudly at 65. The chronic stress you normalize at 30 may show up as hypertension or memory issues decades later. So the real question is not whether we will age, the question is how consciously we are willing to participate in that process. And beneath the practical advice about anti-inflammatory diets and regular movement, there is something deeper that emerged from so many personal stories, the fear of dependence. Many people said, I do not take medications. But what they were really saying was, I can take care of myself. One woman wrote, I just want to be able to stand on my own and not be a burden. That sentence carries an entire emotional history, because autonomy is not just about physical strength. It is about identity. When we can choose, move, decide, think clearly, contribute, we feel valuable. When we lose that, many people feel invisible. So healthy aging is not only about avoiding disease, it is about protecting autonomy and preserving dignity. And the biggest enemies of that dignity are not birthdays. They are chronic inflammation, sedentary habits, unmanaged stress, and emotional disconnection. The body keeps the score of our lifestyle, yes, but it also keeps the score of unresolved emotional tension, long term stress, elevates cortisol, weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, and accelerates cellular aging. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness and constant productivity, and then we are surprised when decades later the body is exhausted. Learning to pause, to breathe, to pray, to meditate, to step outside and feel the sun on your face. These are not luxuries, they are biological necessities. Another theme that appeared repeatedly is faith. For many people in their 60s and 70s, prayer is not just a ritual, it is regulation. It is a way of calming the nervous system, reframing suffering, and anchoring identity in something larger than physical decline. Some people prefer meditation, others prefer rosary beads at dawn. Others find peace in a garden watching birds, talking to their cat, walking by the ocean. What matters is not the form, what matters is connection. Because loneliness, especially chronic loneliness, has been shown to be as harmful to health as smoking multiple cigarettes a day. And yet, connection does not always mean constant social interaction. Some individuals find deep nourishment in solitude, intentional, peaceful solitude, where they are not running from themselves, but resting in their own presence. There is a difference between isolation and chosen solitude. One drains, the other restores. The key is whether you feel grounded and valued in your own company. Because if you cannot tolerate your own presence, you will constantly seek distraction, and distraction over decades becomes another silent stressor. But we must also acknowledge those who commented with pain, the ones who said, "This came late to my life," the ones who are already managing multiple medications, joint pain, heart conditions, exhaustion, the ones who feel they are swimming upstream, trying to undo years of neglect or circumstances they could not control. To them, I say this clearly: improvement is not erased by imperfection. Even at 60, 70, or beyond, the body retains a remarkable capacity to adapt. Muscle can strengthen, cardiovascular health can improve, neuroplasticity continues throughout life, inflammation can decrease, emotional resilience can grow. It may not reverse everything, but it can dramatically improve quality of life. The narrative that it is too late is often more damaging than the condition itself. Small, consistent changes compound, adding more whole foods, walking 30 minutes daily, incorporating light strength training, reducing ultra processed intake, prioritizing sleep, practicing breath work or prayer for 10 minutes each morning, reconnecting with one meaningful relationship. These are not dramatic gestures. They are daily votes for the person you want to become in 10 or 20 years. Aging with health is not a sudden transformation at retirement. It is the accumulated effect of thousands of ordinary decisions. And every day you are still alive. You are still participating in that process. There's another layer we have to confront honestly. Many people say age is just a number. And psychologically, that statement can be empowering. It pushes back against cultural narratives that equate aging with uselessness. But if we look closely, that phrase is often a shield. Behind it is a silent protest. Do not dismiss me. Do not reduce me. Do not decide that my best years are behind me. And that protest is understandable because modern culture worships youth, speed, appearance, and constant novelty. So when someone turns 60 and says, "I feel 20," what they are really asserting is not denial of time, but preservation of vitality. Vitality is not about pretending you're younger. It is about maintaining curiosity, movement, engagement, and purpose. I've seen people at 70 who are mentally sharper than they were at 40 because they never stop learning. One man wrote that he's preparing to retire at 65, but plans to explore artificial intelligence and travel the world. Another woman began trekking mountains after becoming a widow. Others are learning to drive, starting degrees, building houses, taking painting classes. This is not accidental. It is intentional identity reconstruction. After 60, many roles change. Careers slow down, children leave home, external validation decreases. If identity was built only on productivity or being needed, the transition can feel destabilizing. So the real work becomes internal. Who am I when my previous roles shift? What still gives my life meaning? Healthy aging requires not only physical maintenance, but psychological flexibility. Rigidity accelerates decline, curiosity slows it. Purpose is one of the strongest predictors of longevity and resilience. When someone wakes up with a reason to move, to create, to serve, to connect, their nervous system organizes around engagement rather than withdrawal. This is why some individuals in their 70s report feeling more peaceful and fulfilled than in their 40s. They are no longer chasing external approval. They are choosing what matters. One recurring message in the comments was about contribution, visiting prisoners, feeding the hungry, caring for family, teaching, mentoring, helping neighbors. Altruism is not just moral, it is biological. Acts of generosity increase oxytocin, reduce stress reactivity, and strengthen social bonds. They remind us that we are part of something larger, and yet there is tension here as well. Some people said clearly that they prefer living alone, that social interactions drain them, that solitude gives them peace. This does not contradict the importance of connection. It highlights that connection must be authentic. Forced relationships, chronic conflict, and emotional drain elevate stress hormones and erode well-being. Healthy aging includes choosing environments that do not constantly activate your stress response. Sometimes that means simplifying your social circle. Sometimes it means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means relocating from chaotic, overstimulating environments to calmer ones closer to nature. Nature itself regulates the nervous system. Exposure to green spaces lowers blood pressure, improves mood, and reduces inflammation markers. So when someone says, my best medicine is my garden, that is not poetic exaggeration. It is physiology. We also need to talk about stress more directly. Several people admitted living with high stress for decades. Stress is not merely an emotion, it is a biochemical cascade. Chronic activation of the stress response keeps cortisol elevated, interferes with insulin regulation, disrupts sleep cycles, impairs memory consolidation, and accelerates cellular aging processes. Over time, this contributes to cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders, cognitive decline, and immune suppression. And yet, in many societies, stress is normalized as a badge of honor. I am busy becomes equivalent to I am valuable. But the body does not interpret busyness as meaning, it interprets it as demand. Unmanaged stress across decades is like a slow burn that gradually damages tissues. This is why stress management is not optional, it is foundational. For some, that looks like meditation. For others, prayer. For others, structured breathing exercises, Tai Chi, yoga, walking by the ocean at sunrise. Even 10 minutes daily of intentional nervous system downregulation can recalibrate baseline stress levels. The cumulative effect over years is profound, and it is not dramatic in a single day, but compounded over decades, it is transformative. Another crucial point raised indirectly in the comments is acceptance. One person wrote, I am 60 and I feel 60. That is what I am and I accept it. There is maturity in that statement. Healthy aging is not denial of reality. It is not pretending. The body does not change. Joints may stiffen. Recovery may take longer. Energy rhythms may shift. Acceptance reduces internal friction. Resistance amplifies suffering. When people fight aging as if it were an enemy, they increase psychological stress. When they collaborate with it, adjusting expectations, honoring limits, maintaining movement within capacity, they preserve both dignity and sustainability. Exercise at 60 does not need to mirror exercise at 20. What matters is consistency and adaptation. Strength training preserves muscle mass and bone density. Cardiovascular activity maintains heart health and cognitive function. Flexibility practices protect mobility. But the goal is not to prove youth, it is to maintain function. When someone at 65 can climb stairs without assistance, carry groceries, think clearly, and sleep peacefully, that is not small. That is enormous freedom. And then there's the topic of medication. Some proudly say they take none. Others argue that if medication improves quality of life, there's no shame in using it. Both perspectives contain truth. Medication is not moral failure. Dependency is contextual. The deeper issue is not the pill itself, but the quality of underlying lifestyle. If a medication supports stability while a person builds healthier habits, it can be a tool. The problem arises when medication becomes a substitute for behavioral change. We cannot out-medicate a chronically inflammatory diet, persistent sleep deprivation, and unmanaged stress indefinitely. The foundation must still be lifestyle. Anti-inflammatory nutrition, rich in vegetables, fruits, healthy fats, quality proteins, fiber, and minimal ultra-processed foods reduces systemic inflammation. Regular physical movement improves mitochondrial efficiency and metabolic health. Adequate sleep supports immune repair and cognitive resilience. Emotional regulation protects cardiovascular function. These pillars are simple but not easy. They require daily commitment, but simplicity is powerful. You do not need extreme interventions. You need consistency. There's a phrase that appeared quietly but powerfully in several reflections. I hope it is not too late. That sentence carries regret, but it also carries hope. Many people reach 60 and look back at decades marked by stress, overwork, unresolved grief, poor nutrition, smoking, alcohol, or simply neglecting themselves because they were busy raising children, building careers, surviving difficult marriages, or caring for others. They realize that for years they were in survival mode, and now the body shows the cost. hypertension, joint degeneration, metabolic disorders, fatigue. They ask themselves, if the damage is irreversible, this is where perspective matters deeply. The body has limits, yes, but it also has remarkable plasticity. Muscle tissue can rebuild even in the 70s and 80s. Insulin sensitivity can improve with dietary shifts and movement. Cognitive function can stabilize and sometimes improve with mental engagement and cardiovascular exercise. Inflammation markers can decrease with sustained changes in nutrition and stress management. The human organism is not static, it is adaptive, but adaptation requires consistency. It is not about a 2-week detox or a dramatic resolution. It is about daily repetition of small behaviors that accumulate. The tragedy is not aging. The tragedy is giving up prematurely because of shame about the past. Shame paralyzes, responsibility mobilizes. You cannot rewrite your 20s or 30s, but you can redefine your 60s and 70s. Another deep theme in the stories shared is resilience through adversity. Cancer survivors, people living with asthma, osteoporosis, heart rhythm disturbances, individuals in high stress cities still walking 10,000 steps by the beach, widows who began mountain trekking, nurses in their 60s still working in pediatrics, business owners running companies while raising teenage children at 60. These are not superhuman individuals. They are people who refuse to collapse into the narrative of decline. Resilience does not mean absence of pain. It means engagement despite pain. Many of them still experience physical discomfort. They still take medications in some cases, but they focus on what they can control. That locus of control is protective when people believe that every outcome is predetermined or that my destiny is fixed. Motivation declines. But when they believe that daily actions influence trajectory, behavior changes. Even those who speak strongly about faith demonstrate this dynamic. They pray, yes, but they also walk, exercise, change diet, start courses, learn languages. Faith does not replace action; it supports it. It reduces existential anxiety and provides meaning in the face of uncertainty. Psychologically, meaning reduces stress reactivity. Spiritually anchored individuals often show greater emotional stability under pressure, whether one frames it as faith in God, connection to the universe, or alignment with personal values. That anchoring matters. We also need to confront the social dimension of aging. Retirement can be liberating, but it can also create identity voids. If someone's entire self-worth was tied to professional productivity, the transition may feel like erasure. Healthy aging requires planning, not only financially, but psychologically. What will fill your days? What communities will you belong to? What skills will you cultivate? Several people wrote about enrolling in degrees, workshops, art classes, language courses. This is cognitive stimulation. The brain thrives on challenge. Neuroplasticity persists across the lifespan, but it requires novelty and effort. Learning a new language at 68 is not just a hobby. It is a direct investment in neural resilience. Similarly, physical challenges such as trail running, swimming, or resistance training signal the body to maintain capacity. The message is clear. Use it or lose it. is not a threat. It is a biological principle. Inactivity accelerates decline. Engagement preserves function. At the same time, engagement must be balanced. One person mentioned living for years with high combustion stress. That phrase is revealing. Many high achieving individuals drive themselves relentlessly for decades. They accumulate success, wealth, recognition, but they deplete reserves. Then at 60, the body demands payment. Sustainable vitality requires pacing. Intensity can exist, but it must be cyclical. Rest is not laziness, it is restoration. Um, Sleep becomes increasingly important with age. During deep sleep, growth hormone supports tissue repair, immune modulation occurs, memory consolidates. Chronic sleep deprivation undermines every other healthy behavior. You cannot out exercise or out eat poor sleep. Um, this is why evening routines, reduced screen exposure, and consistent sleep schedules are not trivial. They are foundational. And then there is dignity in simplicity. Many people describe joy in small routines: tending plants, painting, cooking, walking with friends, attending church, knitting, dancing, singing, helping neighbors. There is a misconception that vitality requires dramatic achievements. In reality, sustainable well being often emerges from ordinary rituals repeated with intention. When someone says, "Today's my best day" at 60 or 70, that is not denial of aging. It is appreciation of presence. Presence reduces anticipatory anxiety about the future and rumination about the past. Mindfulness, whether secular or spiritual, anchors attention in the current moment. Biologically, this reduces sympathetic nervous system activation and supports parasympathetic recovery. Emotionally, it increases gratitude. Gratitude itself correlates with improved psychological well being and even physical markers such as lower inflammatory cytokines. So when someone repeats "thank you" as a mantra, that repetition shapes neural pathways. Yet we cannot ignore those who feel tired, ill, or discouraged. The man who wrote that he is exhausted and believes God may take him soon. The individuals facing surgeries, varicose veins, chronic pain. The message for them cannot be simplistic positivity. It must be compassionate realism that quality of life can improve even when disease remains. Pain management strategies, gentle movement within capacity, social support, emotional processing, and spiritual anchoring can increase perceived well-being even in chronic illness. Health is multidimensional. Someone may have a diagnosis and still experience meaning, connection, and joy. The goal is not perfection. It is optimization within context. When we step back and look at all these voices together, a pattern becomes undeniable. Healthy aging is not a single decision made at 60. It is the cumulative echo of thousands of ordinary days. It is the food chosen when no one is watching. It is the walk taken even when motivation is low. It is the boundary set with someone who drains your energy. It is the courage to start a class when you feel embarrassed to be the oldest in the room. It is the humility to accept help when needed without collapsing into shame. It is the discipline to go to bed on time. It is the willingness to forgive yourself for past neglect and move forward anyway. And aging well is not about competing with younger generations. It is about honoring the body and mind you have now and asking honestly, what do they need from me today? There is also a deeper psychological shift that often occurs after 60. The horizon of time feels more visible, priorities sharpen, superficial conflicts lose importance. People begin to ask, what legacy am I leaving? Not only in terms of money or property, but in terms of emotional memory. How will my children or grandchildren remember my presence as stressed, resentful, and distracted, or as grounded, engaged, and alive? Legacy is shaped daily. The way you manage stress, the way you speak about aging, the way you treat your own body sends a message to the next generation about what is possible. If you demonstrate curiosity at 70, you give permission for lifelong learning. If you demonstrate discipline in movement and nutrition, you normalize self-care. If you demonstrate faith or reflective depth, you model inner anchoring. Your aging is not private, it is instructional. And here is something crucial. Independence does not mean isolation. Strength does not mean rigidity. Dignity does not mean denial. There will be seasons when you need medication, seasons when you need support, seasons when energy fluctuates. The objective is not to avoid every vulnerability. It is to build enough resilience that vulnerability does not define you. If you need a pill that improves your quality of life, use it wisely. But do not let it replace movement. If you experience stress, address it with intentional practices rather than suppressing it. If you feel lonely, seek meaningful connection rather than endless distraction. If you prefer solitude, ensure it is nourishing rather than defensive. Awareness transforms habits into choices. So if you are approaching 60 or already beyond it, ask yourself this clearly: what kind of old age am I building today? Not in fear, but in responsibility. If you are 40 or 50, understand that aging has already begun in subtle ways. Inflammation accumulates quietly. Stress leaves biochemical footprints, but so does care. Every time you choose whole food over processed, movement over inertia, reflection over reactivity, you are depositing into a long-term account called vitality, and that account compounds. For those who feel it may be late, remember this: improvement is still possible. You may not erase every condition, but you can increase strength, improve metabolic markers, enhance cognitive clarity, deepen emotional stability, and cultivate peace. The body responds to consistent signals. Give it signals of nourishment, challenge, rest, and connection. Give your mind signals of curiosity and purpose. Give your spirit signals of gratitude and meaning. Aging with health is not an accident, it is participation. And perhaps the most liberating realization is this: aging is not the opposite of youth, it is the evolution of it. Youth chases expansion, outward; maturity refines expansion, inward. The question is not whether time will pass, it will. The question is whether you will move through it, passively or consciously. Every sunrise is an opportunity to reinforce the trajectory you want. Begin where you are. Start small if necessary. Walk, breathe, learn, connect, forgive, pray, or meditate. Sleep, eat with awareness. Protect your autonomy, not through denial, but through disciplined care.